Hello, and welcome back to Wendy's Weird World. Or if you're new here, welcome for the first time, and I hope you come back. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to my tale. Today's story is Reflections. Trigger warnings for elements in this story include mild profanity, spirituality, religion, shadow figures, mental stress, and anxiety. If that type of thing bothers you, you can click off now. For those staying, let's get on with the story. Reflections. My name is Cheryl Sunny Brown, but I go by Cher. I'm a 28-year-old interior decorator from Anaheim, California. I consider myself a pretty typical person. My days are filled with work, followed by either yoga or a swim at the pool. Evenings are reserved for dinner and some downtime before bed. Recently, I started going to bed an hour earlier to incorporate meditation into my routine before sleeping. My story begins on a seemingly ordinary day. After my morning shower, I was getting ready to head to a client's office. I love working on freshly renovated spaces. There's such a blank canvas for creativity. As a final check on my hair and makeup in the bathroom mirror, I turned to leave and caught a glimpse of something unusual. There was a shadow behind me, one that wasn't my own. I quickly spun back to look behind me, terrified. When I looked in the mirror again, there was only my reflection staring back at me. I took a few deep breaths and shook it off as a trick of the light. I continued with my day, but a sense of unease lingered. I had lunch with my best friend Jenna, and by then I still couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I asked Jenna if she'd ever seen anything weird in the mirror. She looked at me, surprised and a little confused. You mean like a mole or a lump that wasn't there before? No, I replied. I mean like a spirit or shadow that doesn't belong? Jenna leaned in, clearly intrigued. I knew she was interested because she was into the paranormal and loved to watch ghost hunting shows. Cher Bear, did you summon Bloody Mary? I shook my head no. Of course not. Even though you know I truly don't believe in that, it's not worth finding out that I'm wrong. But today, I paused, trying to find the right words to decide if I really wanted to tell her. This morning when I was getting ready for work, I saw a shadow behind me as I was walking away. I went back to look again, but it was gone. I felt creeped out all day because of it. Jenna raised her eyebrows, clearly excited at what I had to say. Call me if you see it again. Ooh, or get a picture and text me. It wasn't really reassuring or comforting, but I did feel a little less anxious just telling her what happened. Over the next few days, strange occurrences became more frequent. Walking past a parked car on the way into the office building where I was working, again, behind me I saw a shadowy figure. I paused for a second and brushed the hair from the side of my face and tucked it behind my ear. The shadow did not mimic the same motion. As the day passed, I noticed every shadow, and I could have sworn that some of them would move just out of sight in the reflections, and the feeling of being watched persisted. At first, I chalked it up to stress and being overworked. After all, life in the bustling world of interior design can be demanding considering some of the tight deadlines. But the appearances became a little too consistent to ignore. I was tempted to call Jenna, but I had no pictures for her, and I knew she would feel let down by that. I didn't think she'd have many answers for me either, and I didn't even have all the questions yet, just the one. What are these shadows? One evening, while meditating, I felt a presence in the room with me. I opened my eyes expecting to see something staring down at me, but the room was empty. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. It wasn't long after that when nearly any reflective surface, the silver doors of an elevator, shiny painted surfaces, windows, and especially mirrors, seemed to reveal these shadowy figures. They didn't seem to hide from me as I thought when I first started seeing them. I noticed that they seemed to be attached to some people, but not to others, and nobody seemed to acknowledge their presence. After a long day of work and then yoga, I went home, showered, and changed into my PJs. While looking in my full-length mirror in my room, I got up close to the mirror and I started to examine the shadow looming behind me. Getting a close-up look at it, I could tell it had features like eyes, nose, and lips, but it was almost as though a dark, smooth layer of smoke clung to its skin, moving when it moved. I tried to take a photo to text it to Jenna, but I ended up the only one in the photograph when I looked at it. I called her and asked her if she had time to stop by. I hadn't had dinner yet, and she offered to bring over pizza and have dinner while getting an update on the shadows in the reflection. When Jenna arrived, I was immediately distracted by the strong aroma of garlic and tomato sauce, and I realized I hadn't eaten since breakfast because I ended up working through lunch that day. "Hello, Jenna," I joked as I greeted her. "You didn't eat again, huh?" Jen knew me well. She sat down the pizza and breadsticks and opened the boxes while I grabbed a couple of plates and drinks. "Beer if you have it, please." She knew I tried to keep a couple of IPA on hand for her when she stopped by. I didn't drink often, but I got one for myself as well. We were quiet as we flat out chowed down for the first couple of minutes, and it was Jen who broke the silence, still chewing pizza in between her words. "So, what happened that you called me?" I took out my phone and showed the photograph to her. I wasn't the only one in the mirror when I took this. She looked at the picture. I saw her make the picture bigger, struggling to see anything out of the ordinary. "But you're the only one in the mirror, so you can't take pictures of these things." "Makes sense." "Why do you say it makes sense?" I wondered. Jenna finished chewing a huge bite of pizza and swallowed with a big gulp of beer. "If they showed up in pictures, everyone would have weird shit in their pictures a lot more often than it actually happens. And most of that is fake as ass." After we finished eating, Jenna and I went into the bedroom where the full-length mirror was. We both stepped in front of it. Yet there were 3 figures being reflected. "Do you see it?" I asked, not hopeful. Nobody else seemed to be observing them when I saw them. I didn't expect her to really see it either. I wish she would, because then I'd know I wasn't going crazy. "No bueno," Jenna replied. It was just as I had thought. "You don't think," I began. "You don't think I'm going crazy, do you?" I didn't think I was, but wow, did it feel like I was. "No, sis," she replied, and I saw her face brighten with a thought. "You still doing that meditation thing?" "Yes, why?" "What if," she pondered, "what if instead of going out of your mind, you're gaining enlightenment? What if you popped open that third eye in your noggin?" She reached forward and touched her index finger to my forehead as she said it. Leave it to Jenna to go in that direction. But maybe she was right. It was starting to get late, so Jenna took off, and she left me a slice of leftover pizza and a breadstick for a late-night snack, or as Jenna called it, the 4th meal. I wanted help, and while Jenna may have been onto something with that whole third eye thing, I wanted some more experienced help. However, I didn't think this was one for the therapist. After all, I didn't want to end up wearing grippy socks. After considering the options, I did a search for psychic advisors in my area. I came up with a list a lot longer than I expected, so I started going through the reviews. I sighed at the long list of Karens complaining about these psychics for some of the most ridiculous things, but then I came across one that had 4 out of 5 stars. Her name was Miss Beulah, and she had moved here from New Orleans as a semi-retired psychic. Reviews alluded to her flat out knowing things she couldn't have possibly known, and to her cleansing homes from dark spirits. Miss Beulah had a home office, and she wasn't too far away, out in Long Beach. I made a note to call her in the morning, and watched a silly rom-com before going to bed. eating my pizza and breadstick during a mid-movie intermission. When I went to bed, sleep came easier than I thought it would. When I called Miss Beulah before leaving for work, I was fortunate that she had an opening that evening after my work. Miss Beulah's home office was in a nice neighborhood and was landscaped with beautiful climbing roses, lavender, flowering sage, and a few other plants I didn't recognize. Miss Beulah welcomed me inside with a warm smile and soft, comforting voice with a noticeable accent. "Come in, Miss Cher." She was dressed in a lovely teal empire waist dress with embroidered flowers and a delicate design growing from the hemline upward. Her curly hair was corralled by a matching fabric headband tied at the back. She walked me through the foyer, into the hallway, and down to her office. The office was painted a lowly pale teal color, more of an off-white tone than a vibrant color. The accents in the room were a more saturated teal color, and some were soft pink. The furniture and even most of the artwork incorporated these colors. After studying meditation and learning about the colors of psychic energies, the color scheme made perfect sense for her office, and as a designer, I wouldn't have chosen any differently. Miss Beulah seemed eager to hear my story. Sure, she was getting paid to hear me, but she was actively listening, much like a trained therapist would. When I got to the part where I was explaining how not everyone had a shadow figure with them, Miss Beulah nodded. "Of course they aren't with everyone, my dear. Would you mind looking into this mirror over here with me, Miss Cher?" Miss Beulah walked over to the left side of the room, where a large oval mirror adorned the wall. I got up and walked over with her and looked into the mirror. There was only the shadow figure that had been following me around. I told this to Miss Beulah, and she just nodded and smiled. "That is correct, my dear. What you are seeing in reflections is actually a higher dimension. For years, those who practice magic or in the occult have used mirrors in darkness to scry and try to see the future. But what they've really been trying to do is to see into other dimensions. Because you see, time we experience as linear is not actually so. It is fluid. Currently, we flow in one direction, as though we are on a river. But even with the river, there is still water before you and after you, not just beneath your raft. Beyond this world we live in, there are timeless beings. Typically, we just call this a higher plane because the specifics are quite complex, and to be honest, I don't actually believe anyone has it truly figured out yet." She leaned in and asked, "Tell me, have you seen the light beings?" I shook my head to answer no. "These dark beings you're seeing, they are psychic vampires, for lack of a better term. They thrive off negative feelings. They seem to inspire fear, anxiety, and depression in those they attach themselves to. Some may call them demons, others may call them jinn," Miss Beulah continued, a smile on her face. "The light beings, it seems, are on an even higher plane. Yet they in the shadows can interact with each other. They sometimes seem to discourage or chase away the dark ones, and give those around them feelings of calm, peace, and sometimes enlightenment. These are most likely what people consider to be an angel, or more specifically, a guardian angel." This wasn't really what I was expecting to hear. Sure, I had my struggles with depression and anxiety. That was the main reason why I'd taken up yoga and meditation in the first place. My therapist had told me it was a good idea to help relieve the stress that could be causing these dark emotions. Could it be the demon all along? I grew up Christian, But admittedly, as an adult, I hadn't attended church much, feeling that it was more about money and less about a religion. But that didn't mean I had lost faith in God. Miss Beulah had given me a moment to reflect on what she had told me, and I'm certain she saw the look of contemplation on my face. The angels and demons part through you a bit, I see. I nodded. A bit. Well, you know in the good book it tells of angels falling after the rebellion. I nodded and she continued. We always think of them below us, somewhere deep in the fiery guts of the earth burning forever. But it never actually said below the earth. They were banished to a lower plane of existence. I consider it to be a shadow plane. But the beings do seem to be smoky, so perhaps that's the link to the fiery plane. Either way, it's a lower plane than the angelic plane. But since they are still higher beings, banished from the angelic plane, their plane of existence is still higher than the one we live in. I took a moment to take this in. Do either of them talk? I asked. On occasion, yes. Although, it's more of an impression you get rather than them opening their mouths to talk the way that we do. It's all in the mind, she explained. Continue with your meditation and do everything you can to keep those negative thoughts at bay. Don't feed the shadow. They're hard to get rid of, but it is possible if you're able to control your emotions and essentially stop them. Thank you, Miss Beulah. I held up my hand to shake hers, and she took my hand in both of hers in a caring handshake. Now, you come back and see me when you get to see those live villains. I'll be happy to hear it, Miss Beulah told me, and I nodded and told her that I would. It was a relief to know that she believed me. More than that, knew what they were and what they were doing. Sadly, none of this would stop me from seeing the horrible things. And when I say it's not a pleasant experience, it's an understatement. These beings are beyond unsettling just to look at. Somehow I'm supposed to keep stress and worry away. It seemed like a near impossible task for me. Even as I worried on the way home, I couldn't help but notice a shadow figure in the windshield reflection, sitting in the passenger seat. And it seemed to be smiling through its thick, smoky skin. Working as a decorator, unfortunately, I work with mirrors often because they help make rooms look bigger and enhance the lighting. I would try to shift the mirror installations to the end of the job so I could spend less time dealing with them. Well, actively trying to avoid looking at them, that is. About a week after meeting Miss Beulah, I was looking in the mirror, getting ready for work, and I saw a flash within the mirror. It was a bright, sunburst kind of light. I instinctively shielded my eyes from it, then it seemed to dim into a humanoid being. As the shadow person had what appeared to be a second skin made of smoke, this being seemed to have a second skin made of pure light. Not fire, but a golden light, as though the sun was shining onto golden sequins or diamonds that shone bright and sparkled slightly. It was dazzling to behold, and as I got a closer look, I saw it appeared to be smiling, and I felt this warm and loving sensation. I saw the shadow creature frown deeply, knowing that I could now see the light being. I wanted to stay and bask in the warmth of the light being, but I had to leave for work. I was happy to see the reflection of it in the glass of the car as I got in. It seems that it called shotgun, but I couldn't help notice the shadow being in the back seat when I would use the rearview mirror. I called to make an appointment with Miss Beulah. She was delighted to hear from me again and let me know that she had an opening that evening. That evening, Miss Beulah greeted me warmly again. I see you have something to share, Miss Cher, she said, leading me back to her cozy office. I saw one of the light beings, I began. Excitement and relief was evident in my voice. It was like it was made of sunlight. I felt comforted. Miss Beulah's eyes twinkled with understanding. The light beings are guardians. They protect and guide us. Their presence is a blessing, especially when faced with these shadow creatures. I took a deep breath, steeling myself to ask the question that had been gnawing at me. Miss Beulah, these shadow beings, what do they really want? Her expression grew serious. As I said before, these beings feed on our negativity, but more than that, they seek something humans have that other beings don't. A soul. The weight of her words settled over me. So it wants my soul? I asked. My voice was trembling. Miss Beulah nodded gently. They are drawn to the light of the soul and seek to corrupt it so that they may consume it. But these light beings, the guardians, are here to protect us. They come from a place of divine grace. I shuddered as the realization sank in. For the past month and a half, I had been seeing demons in reflections. Horror struck me as I thought about how many people had these dark figures following them around. How do I get rid of it? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Miss Beulah smiled softly. That is the question, isn't it? There have been many spells, incantations, rituals, herbs, symbols, and runes used to banish these entities throughout the ages. Many of them have been proven to work, but often only for the person who created them. When others try to replicate the same methods, they often fall short. What you need to do is find the way, be it a ritual, symbol, or whatever, that you know will work for you. How? How will I know it will work? I asked, feeling lost. Miss Beulah took my hand in hers. Her grip was warm and reassuring, and she looked into my eyes. My dear, you will know. I returned home and dove into researching banishing techniques. I scoured the internet for rituals and spells, but none seemed to resonate with me. As I was scrolling through pages of information, I heard a rattling sound coming from my bathroom. My heart raced as I recognized it was coming from the room where I first saw the shadow being. I entered the bathroom, and there it was, the shadow creature inside the mirror. The light being was there too, but the shadow was tapping the mirror, causing it to shake in its frame. It's trying to come through, I heard a voice say in my head. Frantically and instinctually, I grabbed a lipstick from the makeup tray, and I drew a straight line down the mirror, and then a horizontal one, forming a cross. I'm not sure why I did it, but I knew it was the thing to do. The rattling stopped. The shadow recoiled. Relief washed over me, but then I heard the same rattling sound coming from my bedroom. I rushed to the full-length mirror, lipstick still in my hand. It was time to end this. I don't know how I knew what to do, but Miss Beulah had been right. I would know. You are not welcome here, I yelled at the mirror. I banish you from my presence with the power of light, faith, hope, and all the goodness that God bestowed on mankind. As I spoke, the light being grew brighter, and the shadow demon seemed to shrink back. I pulled the cross necklace from around my neck, kissed it, and pressed it to the glass where the demon's forehead was reflected. The cross grew warm in my hand, then uncomfortably hot, but I held on, and the demon let out a shriek as it faded out of existence. The light being smiled, and it looked like it was giving me a thumbs up. When I stopped pressing the cross to the mirror, to my surprise, it did not pull away. I had to pry it from the glass, and as I did, I noticed that it left an imprint of the cross melted into the glass of the mirror. I knew then it had worked. I took a photograph of the mirror and texted it to Jenna with the message, "I have a story for you. Pizza Thursday night?" I decided to show it to Miss Beulah during my next visit. I had a feeling she would want to hear the news of how I banished the demon. On my way to see her, I stopped by a flower shop to pick up a small houseplant as a thank you gift. As I approached the counter to pay, I saw two shadows behind the clerk in the window's reflection. After I paid for the plant, I wrote my name and phone number on my receipt and removed my necklace and handed it to the clerk. "Light is greater than darkness, my friend," I said. "Call me if you need a friendly ear." I could sense there was a deep sadness about her. She looked at me surprised, but with gratitude, a tear sliding down her cheek as she put on the necklace, and she put the receipt in her pocket. "Thank you." Immediately, in the reflection of the shop window, I saw the two shadow figures distance themselves from her as the light being moved closer. My light being nodded at me approvingly as I left with my small plant, heading to my appointment with Miss Beulah. Miss Beulah noticed that my necklace was missing and asked me where it was. She was delighted to hear about my success in banishing the shadow and encouraged me to continue spreading the light. She explained that while shadows may never completely disappear, the presence of the light beings and the strength of her spirit can keep them at bay. And so, I continued my journey armed with my newfound understanding and determination. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I was no longer afraid. The light within me was stronger than the darkness around me, and that made all the difference. I want to thank you for staying to hear my tale, and this is the part where I ask you to like, comment, subscribe, and use the little bell for notification settings. You know, the YouTuber stuff. I very much appreciate it, and please feel free to share with anyone you think may enjoy it. Until next time, be well, be happy, and stay safe. After all, it's a weird world.